Alright, so we're behind until 8. So we just
via the YouTube membership program.
okay. 1, BBC 1, BBC 2, ITV, British Channel 4.
Hello, and welcome to the 100th episode of The Ident Review, the show where we have a good look and chat about the various television idents that we've come to know and love over
5.
And for our 100th episode, we're going to do something really special, as we'll be taking a look at 100 idents from 100 channels.
Maybe it's American. Or is it all going to be UK? Who knows? Episode 100, so 100. Let's see. I don't know what we're going to do. I think I know what we're going to do for our 30th. I got... Well, I'll tell you one thing, guys. I do got a special coming out tomorrow that will be for the channel tomorrow. Tomorrow there is a special coming out. It's a video that I'm going to be making early, but I'm going to make it right off the bat. It will be live, and it'll be already made. It'll be pre-made because I'm too lazy to just. I was just gonna be too lazy to forget about doing it. So yeah, tomorrow I got a special video coming tomorrow, and this is a video that you guys do not want to see. But I'm doing it anyways.
Television was invented almost 100 years ago, and in that century of existence, we've witnessed the extraordinary evolution and expansion of the medium that we've all come to know and love so well. And I fully believe that the use of idents, the key banner of presentation for nearly every TV channel, has definitely played its part in that. Now, obviously, I could have picked an ident from every TV channel that's ever existed, otherwise, who knows when this episode would end.
Couple hours.
We'll be looking at, where on earth do we start? Well, how about with the company and in effect the channel that started it all?
The BBC.
BBC One.
The BBC One. I'm gonna say this purple chair, guys. BBC One.
Bob Mortimer with one of the funniest stories yet, but is it true? Would I lie to you? The unseen bits from the last series in half an hour. You're on BBC One.
A very welcome improvement. Ever since the full debut of Oneness in early 2017, I and many others weren't exactly shy about voicing our disappointment with the new look. So finally, after 5 years, this new branding is such a breath of fresh air. Dubbed the Lens Batch by many, the central point of these new idents is a lens cutting across the middle of the screen, showcasing a different scenario to what's happening in the rest of the picture. It's a neat motif, and one I feel is subtle enough, but also effective enough to the viewing eye. The example I chose here was the trampoline variant, taking place in a vast hall, but when the lens cuts in, we see the hall used for a meeting, as well as preparations taking place for a glitzy sort of ball in the evening. I've seen many refer to the lens motif as being a subtle reference to the globe, a feature that was a staple of BBC idents from the 1960s all the way up until the 1990s, and I'd agree in the sense that it's as much of a homage as the circles were to the globe back in 2006. But ultimately, I'm a big fan of the new look for BBC One. The new BBC logo looks great amongst the sequence too, and don't worry, I know many of you want a full review of all the lens variants, and I'm sure that will come sometime in the near future. But for now, we have 99 more idents to look at today, so let's jump to the corporation's main sister channel, BBC Two.
Okay, BBC Two. I wonder if it's gonna go to any American channels or not. BBC Two.
You're watching BBC Two.
That should have come with a brightness warning. The curve idents have been in use on BBC Two ever since 2018, and despite some criticising their rather abstract and trippy design, I immediately grew fond of the distinctive style. The curve down the middle, of course, represents the 2 numeral, but of course it's what's happening around the curve that remains the main attraction. In this instance, we see numerous shapes change their form as various colours sweep through the screen, and the colours used are quite frankly gorgeous to look at. You get reds, blues, purples, greens, yellows, a whole array of shades are in use here, and when viewing in HD, they're nothing short of breathtaking. But continuing down the terrestrial path, let's take a look at an ident from the BBC's first, and still to this day, most major rival, ITV.
3 ITV.
This is ITV. Our next presentation is a new spy thriller starring Joe Cole, with some scenes of violence. Let's open the Ipcress file.
Seems like we're going retro. To help support the new TV adaptation of 60s classic The Ipcress File, The other side decided to lean into the era and produce a special ident reminiscent of the time. We even get an old ITV transmitter test card before cutting to an ident that was clearly inspired by the first colour sequence from London Weekend Television. The orange background, the use of a spinning disc, the new addition of a revolving logo in the centre is quite nice, and overall, the whole thing does feel like it could have existed in the early days of colour TV during the late 60s. I'm not sure why the background swaps colours from orange to green and blue. I think keeping the orange throughout would have been just fine. On the more positive note, I like the way the two white lines shoot in and help form the logo and the accompanying text. It's not often these days do you get to see the ITV name spelled out like that in full, especially in the 60s retro style, and even though it's being done in that retro-esque homage, it remains great to see. But now, let's take a look at what was at one time the new kid on the terrestrial block.
Channel
And that,
4.
of course, it's Channel 4.
Channel 4. Channel 4. Wow, that's neat. There's a lot of candles for.
Bet you can guess which decade this came from. Granted, some factors do give it away. The original multicolored design of the 4 was in place from the channel's inception up until the mid-1990s. But for me, the dead giveaway is the music. The ident itself is presented in quite an elegant way. Sweeping camera shots showcasing a growing array of candles, all of which make up the iconic 4 before they're all lit, creating quite a striking image to say the least. However, for me, the music absolutely butchers this ident's full potential. The upbeat synthy tunes are easy on the ear, but I just think it's the complete opposite sort of sound to what this sequence would need. Perhaps a more piano-based, slower, maybe even quieter jingle could have benefited this ident in a more effective way. I mean, don't get me wrong, what we do have is really lovely, but the impact could have been so much greater had the musical choice been a little more accurate. It's always a shame to see a lovely-looking ident not reach its full potential due to one factor letting it down. But let's see now if that issue can be avoided as we look at the fifth and final main terrestrial player, Channel 5.
Channel 5? I thought it was
We
4.
hand over to the 21.co.uk live casino show.
That's neat. Oh, okay. There's like 4 channels in the UK. I didn't know about Channel 5. I knew Channel
I
4.
have to include a little bit of Christmas in here somewhere. In terms of Channel 5's current look, which it has used for some years now, I've never really been a huge fan. It looks nice and sleek, and the colour variations are a neat addition, but they've never really captured my imagination and interest in the same way that other channels have. However, when I saw their 2021 Christmas variants, that's when I fell in love with them. The playout of the sequence remains the same, with the ridges of the 5 gradually rising, the camera focusing on different aspects of the overall shape, but etched into these ridges are bright glowing gold images, all of which represent and capture the magic of Christmas. The choice to make them bright gold, I think, was a brilliant idea, as it blends beautifully with the darker main colour of the ident and the final image, showing the 5, but with all of the images projected coming off it, it looks truly fantastic. The 5 numeral remains the key focus, but the festive imagery serves as a good complement, highlighting the time of year and helping to make viewers feel more cosy and in the appropriate mood. But now we move on to our 6th channel today, one that recently made a triumphant return to our TV screens, BBC 3.
BBC 3?
Look, for if you can't communicate in relationships, then respectfully, you're done putting couples to the test.
BBC
With
3?
Tonight at 10. Look at that rhyme. Speaking of rhyming, is toxic masculinity everywhere. Let's find out in some real bars. This is Toxic Teen, Laugh Lessons.
Nice to see the hands getting new variants already. BBC 3 has only been a conventional TV channel since February 2022, and in these first few months, the hands have gotten a decent run of support in the form of new idents. This one, Keyboard, continues the trend of utilising the hand characters in fun and quirky situations. We see the 3 play along with the background music, adding new notes that fit surprisingly well. I do wish they perhaps added even more variety though, such as changing up the type of music, or even completely going off the rails. As it stands, it's a fine addition to the new BBC 3 lineup, the pinks and purples of the hands correlating beautifully with the bright green background, but I feel that we're only scratching the surface as to what can be done with these characters, and I hope that in the months and years to come, that BBC 3 can keep pushing its idents to new lengths. But now, let's move over to the other BBC channel that was first born in the early 2000s, BBC 4.
How many BBC 4 channels do these guys got? 4? 10? Yeah, I know.
Now on BBC 4, a powerful and compelling monologue from an award-winning performance artist as she embarks on a very personal voyage. With discriminatory language you may find offensive, This is Salt by Selena Thompson.
A lovely new addition to the lineup.
That's pretty
Ever
neat.
since 2005, BBC 4 has ran with the same motif, with the split screen into 4 rectangles, each often containing a slight variation of the image on screen.
Okay.
Coinciding with the new BBC logo, the channel got a few new idents, one of which is this, showcasing a painting in a gallery, and one that can change its appearance. As the camera pans across, we see the artwork completely transform into something new, something equally as beautiful as what we started with. The completely smooth sweeping effect is very visually appealing, and the lack of any real soundtrack actually works in this sequence's favour, if you ask me. It forces you to solely focus on what the visual stimulus is on the TV screen. And when you're working with imagery as stunning as this, it's hard to draw your eyes away. BBC 4 may still be working with a concept that it first introduced nearly 20 years ago, but if they can turn out idents such as this, then I don't see any reason why they should retire it anytime soon. And now it seems only fair that we look at the sister channels of ITV. So let's start off with ITV2.
Hammers and clocks.
Well, what a smash that was. Ever since ITV2 introduced this concept for their idents of 2015, I found them relatively hit or miss. No doubt you've seen several different variations pop up on your screens over the years, and some of them instantly settle in your memory, whereas others come and go, and aren't likely to stick around. The one I chose here, a series of hammers flying into a wall of clocks, I'd argue is one of the better variants. The stark white and reds that make up most of the colours correlate surprisingly well, and seeing these hammers fly into and smash the glass of these clocks is oddly quite satisfying. If anything, I do think the sequence was able to play out for much longer than it does, but ultimately I feel the rapid nature of this and other idents like it does work for ITV2. They're not some of the greatest ever made, that's for sure, but they've stuck around for a fair while now, and their appeal must be reaching a fair degree of the viewer base. But can the same be said for the next channel we'll be looking at today, which is ITV3?
ITV3?
Doesn't really get you fired up, does it? This ident is one from the earliest batch of ITV3 sequences, debuting on screens during 2004. We can see that as the square flies around, we see the words drama and movie standing tall in the background, no doubt helping to advertise the kind of programming viewers could expect from the relatively new channel. But if I'm being honest, if I want to get in the mood for a drama or a movie, this dull swath of blue along with easy listening jingles isn't the way to do it. The final image is nice enough. The blues mix well with the white of the text showcasing the ITV corporate logo of the time and the numeral 3, which itself echoes a very common design of the early 2000s. But this sort of presentation feels more laid back, less bombastic, and ultimately more low-key than a channel that is trying to boast its content within its main ident. As the 2010s came around, ITV3's idents definitely got a lot more interesting, but we've already covered those idents in full detail.
Yep.
So with that, let's close off on ITV for now by looking at the last of the numbered offshoots, ITV4.
ITV4.
Coming up at 6:30, Jim Rosenthal is joined by rugby legend Martin Johnson. But first, a look back at the qualifying stages for this month's tournament. It's Road to the Rugby World Cup.
More of a sporty flair for this one. ITV4 was launched in 2005, and these idents mark the first rebrand for the channel, debuting in 2007. This variant shows the 4 numeral acting as a race car on the track, speeding round before jumping over to the rugby field, before scoring the points needed to claim victory, before then standing idly centre field to cheering fans in the background. What I like about sequences like this is that they aren't afraid to let their hair down and have a bit of fun. Giving the numeral of your channel name a personality is not necessarily a new concept, certainly not by 2007, but the way in which it is utilised by ITV4 remains charming nonetheless. My only major criticism is the lack of many colours. We have the silver of the 4, then mainly black and white, with occasional swaths of a teal, which match the standard ITV4 logo of the time. I get wanting to make it more stylised and tailored to your channel, but I think adding 2 or 3 more colours wouldn't have hurt. We're a 10th of the way through our mega celebratory episode, so let's crack on and mosey on over to E4.
E4? E4. Never heard of it.
Married, engaged, or single, we've got it all covered. And more rules of engagement here on E4.
Good old Aoife. The characterful mascot of E4, Aoife was first introduced to the public in 2013. He appeared in numerous different idents, charming viewers all over the country. The one chosen here seems to show Aoife at his humble abode, drinking E4 branded drinks while settling down for a night of telly. I've got to say, I really love the design of Aoife. The way he's been incorporated into the E4 logo is almost seamless, and he's a cute little character to boot. I like looking around this cluttered place, seeing if there are any Easter eggs to spot when we get different camera angles. Some would argue that on the face of it, that isn't the most interesting ident in the world, which is a fair criticism, but I would argue it creates that relaxing mood that you want when you're sitting down for a night of easy-to-watch or trashy TV. There's so many more idents, including Aoife from back in the day, and I highly recommend that you check them out. In the meantime, let's dive into one of the Freeview channels now and take on Challenge.
Challenge? Are these all UK channels I never heard of before? These are all channels. I never heard of any of these channels.
Wonder what was trying to break through. Truth be told, I never watched the Late Zone block of programming on Challenge. I was mainly in it for the never-ending reruns of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. There were a few sequences made for the Late Zone in the early 2010s, and they're all, including this one,
Chromie.
simple in concept. All involve something breaking or bursting through to reveal the channel logo. In this variant, known as Metal, it's implied that perhaps something behind the metal is punching, trying to break through, and by doing so, it's gradually revealing the
When I go to
Late Zone
college,
logo,
I'm getting the TV with
which
me.
is in a pixelated
An
style,
antenna.
which channel
Nothing
it
else.
adopted from 2011 to 2013. I really like the simplistic nature, and the punching effect sort of wakes you up to what's happening on screen. But if anything, I wish something had burst through. I'm not really bothered about what it could have been either, just something to really make the audience take note and get in the right frame of mind for the upcoming programs. I'm not sure if the Late Zone still exists on Challenge, but if it does, as far as I know, it doesn't have its own dedicated ident anymore. But a channel that is still coming out with unique idents is the home of witty banter itself, Dave.
Dave?
For the last few weeks, we've been teasing you with every
Yeah?
episode that's ever been shown. This
Close
is
to
the
their
moment
driveway,
we've all
I mean,
been
their
counting
garage.
down to.
Why?
Sit up and enjoy
There, she said
brand
that
new and exclusive
somebody walked
Dave
off with their
with
compressor.
Wolf 10.
Your garage?
Yeah.
If you're watching, this one's for you, Phil.
Oh, I that's front camera. What time did it happen?
She don't know.
I can't tell her.
You can look.
In the early
She said it probably might have been in the last couple of days.
Sci-fi show.
I can't go back that far.
In 2012.
Remember, I can't go back
the
that
series
far.
of the show, or Red Dwarf X as it was known,
I can't
You
go
can
back.
go
was getting
look.
ready to air.
I can't go back that far. We know we
Dave
can't go back that
commissioned
far.
a
I go back
special
every
sequence
day.
to mark the occasion. The concept is
Then
simple.
go back a day.
We're in space, and a giant behemoth
Okay.
of ship, which is organised to spell out the word Dave, flies past our screens.
Which one? This
It's
one?
quite remarkable amongst the vastness
I don't know
of
which
space.
one would show at the
One
garage.
feature that I do admire is
I
the
don't
sheer
think this one
intricacy
does. I
and
think it
detail
just
that
shows our
goes
yard.
into
It
this
shows
item.
her. That one
The
does.
Dave logo, if you
The
pause and look
garage.
at it, isn't just one 3D
Good
shape
luck.
that has been quickly plastered over a
Good
space
luck.
background.
If
It's
it'll
been
work.
carefully designed with lots of detail to really make it feel like a proper ship, and echoes the similarly detailed design of the titular ship itself, Red Dwarf. I like when channels commission special idents like this to honour a landmark programme, and Red Dwarf certainly fits into that category. Also, if you're a fan of the show, myself and Philip Hawkins run a podcast where we marathon every single episode and give our thoughts. Phil is a seasoned veteran, and me as a first-time viewer. It's called Everybody's Dead Dave, and can be found on Spotify or on Phil's YouTube channel. Go and subscribe to him whilst you're at it too. Now then, progressing on with our own marathon, let's blast out some tunes and switch over to full music. A mixed bag of a design for me. The main thing that I like about this sequence is the energy and the sound of it. For a music channel, mainly playing contemporary chart stuff, I'd argue that a fast, rousing beat like this is absolutely perfect to pique audience interest and set the tone. I also love the bright colours chosen, that shoot around the screen before gradually revealing to us the 4Music logo. This first appeared in 2018, and we can see from the final image that the iconic pink tone used by 4Music for years is still present. But my main criticism, similar to the ITV4 ident that we saw earlier, is that there doesn't feel like there's enough colour throughout. The 4 starting colours are bright and luminant enough, and the way they surge around is certainly visually appealing, but I don't know, the predominantly black tones of the sequence really suck a lot of
I'm
the
trying to
life
do
out of the
shit, and I don't
concept.
want to do it.
I'll take notice of the final image, the music part of the name slotting in perfectly with the main
It's
chord
doing
numeral,
something now. I'm
but
screwed
I
up.
think 4Music, at least ident-wise, has seen better days. But sticking on the theme, let's take a gander at the box. Now this takes me back. As a teenager, I would spend several hours switched onto the box, watching the latest music videos from the pop.
Oh, that's lovely.
Now, events always did stick in my mind, particularly this one, first seen in 2013. We see a
That's lovely. Nothing's working now. Camera error 27. Shouldn't it be our problem? It's your problem. I can't do nothing. I can't do nothing. Why am I doing your rules? Why is something? I don't dare lose something. So I found the truck that you guys are using. That's it. Come over here, it's a car. Stop burning mystery shit, and I'll help you out. Not my problem, it's their problem. They should be careful who they hire to pull shit out of their property.
A pair of hands hold a box through which they see the world anew.
You guys should-
Bright colours spring out from
How should
nowhere,
we do-
and various shapes, and also some giant characters, all before the box morphs into the channel logo. A simple black and white affair, which I'd argue works for a channel simply named as The Box. There seemed to be a trend around this time of TV channels using an item, like the box here, as a window into a different world. If done well, it truly can be an engaging and memorable concept, just as I'd argue it is here. It gives the impression that the content on the box
Why
is
should I be
infinitely
looking
more
for something I don't
colourful,
care about?
lively, and interesting than the regular everyday humdrum. I have many fond memories of the box, which for several years did bring me into that colourful, vibrant world, and I certainly had a great time being there. But let's delve back even further into my past with music-based TV and witness the channel formerly known as Bubble Hits.
Bubble Hits.
Bubble Hits. Music TV, the way it should be.
God, this is so 2008. Bubble Hits was a music-based channel that simply played music videos. As it so proudly boasts, music TV the way it should be. See, around the late 2000s, music channels like MTV and 4Music were beginning to experiment with original or bought-in programming that didn't merely consist of showing off the latest music videos. So perhaps the slogan used by Bubble Hits here is a slight dig against this new trend. And from what I remember, they were the very core of what music TV originally was, merely an outlet to showcase pop videos all day, every day. 2008 is the peak of my time with Bubble Hits, and indeed that's the year that this ident comes from. The design of the sequence in many ways reminds me of the ident's challenge we're using around the same time. Using some silhouettes amongst a brightly coloured background, I'm certain I had something similar on my pencil case in school at the time. May you rest peacefully, Bubble Hits. No one really remembers you, but you were great when we had
At the
you.
Cool TV.
Next
That
up,
was a
we
show.
venture further afield to take a look at FX.
FX is a cable network that we have in the US.
You're watching FX. There's a double dose of cartoon comedy with The Cleveland Show, then Family Guy a bit later. But right now, Roger's got a confession to make. It's American Dad, a brand new UK premiere episode next.
Well, that certainly doesn't happen at your local casino. This ident first appeared on FX around 2011 and really goes the length to grab your
So the
eye.
FX is
We
what we
see a
use in
series
the
of red
US.
rectangles fly around the screen, racing around various gambling games, crashing through poker chips, shooting dice into the air, rolling around the roulette wheel, all key pieces of casino-based iconography. The final image shows one of the red shapes displaying the FX logo, which looks nice and striking all in white against the sleek red. To use a motif such as a casino seems an easy option given how vibrant and colourful they can be, but when done well, they can really stand out. I feel this ident is a good attempt, but it feels like there's just something missing for it to really achieve its greatest impact. It could be the use of even more colour, the incorporation of different games into the mix, I'm really not sure. But as it stands, if this ident was created to be part of an FX rebrand, I'd argue it succeeds in grabbing your attention, just like the primary purpose of a casino. But let's move away from the gambling table and into the realm of the weird and wonderful with sci-fi. Well, this is strange. You'll note that this is in the era of sci-fi before they decided to change the spelling of their name for whatever reason. Debuting in the late 2000s, this certainly sparks the imagination, and to be honest, could definitely be seen in a cheap B-movie of the same genre. We see a guy pull a string of hair from his head, seemingly never-ending, but what it's actually doing is removing the rest of his body, though he remains blissfully unaware. It's a funny sequence for sure, and one that was bound to stick in the minds of some viewers. The sci-fi logo, by comparison, feels very corporate and lacks a lot of personality for me, and it certainly doesn't echo the vast, wonderful ideas of the science fiction genre. Especially when you have crazy idents like this that aren't afraid to lean into the wacky world of the abstract and imaginative. Sci-fi would change their branding and their name, technically, but it's up for debate whether their idents got better or worse. But science fiction is prevalent in films, so it only seems fitting that our next ident is from Film 4.
F4.
A very filmic sequence indeed. The scene is a staircase, and as the picture moves ever quicker, it echoes a strip of film moving through a projector, showing a slightly different image with every passing frame. As the frame does pass, we see the Film 4 logo start to form, before a piano eventually appears, falling closer towards the camera. As it falls, it crashes past the Film 4 logo, breaking it up in exceptionally dramatic fashion. I really do enjoy this sequence. It captures that sophisticated look for Film 4, and many of its alternative idents also capture that feeling too. The red Film 4 logo is also visually striking, and I like that it doesn't immediately adopt the iconic 4 branding on the channel it offshoots from. Granted, the logo would eventually go down that route in the late 2010s, but this iteration of it will always be the definitive look for Film 4 in my eyes. The musical score also perfectly works with what we're seeing on the screen, all in all helping to create an elegant ident that I wish we saw more of, not just in Film 4, but in sequences across the board. Let's seal off our trip to the movies by taking a look at what Sky has to offer.
This is Sky Movies Plus, part of the British Sky Broadcasting Network.
I'm sure this will take some of you back. It's hard to ignore the impact that the Sky brand had on viewers who could access it both in the 1990s and late in the 2000s. In the early days of what would become a juggernaut, the idents of Sky and its offshoots contained a lot of charm and also a lot of appeal. This one for the movie strand I think works a treat. It's bright and colourful, the music is perfectly upbeat and catchy, and the final image is gorgeous. It reminds me of a light banner that you would see displayed on cinema buildings, advertising the latest big feature coming out. It's a great example of all of the elements that make up the sequence coming together to form something magical. And sure, some of the design may seem dated by today's standards, of course, but back in the 1990s, I bet this was seen as something new, something exciting, and something promising a whole lineup of quality films that were big at the time. Movie channels still exist in numerous forms today, but here in the UK, for a time at least, one channel that promised to contain the biggest and best lineup was indeed Sky Movies. Okay, 20 down, 80 to go. I told you this was going to be a long haul. But as we crack on, we're going to take a journey overseas, specifically to the United States of America, to see what idents our pals from across the pond use on their channels. We'll start with one of the big 3, ABC.
Okay, which one are we going to use? Oh, the old colored one, okay.
This is an ABC color presentation.
Okay, ABC.
Very stylish indeed. The Americans were a fair way ahead of us Brits in terms of introducing colour TV, first doing so all the way back in 1954. Although adoption of new colour-capable sets didn't really rise until the 1960s, and to help usher in this new era, one of the national networks, ABC, created this simple stunner of an ident. I love the colours mixed as the shapes roll in, and when the ABC logo finally forms, it's nice to see a good bout of continuity in this new sequence. In the sense that the styling of the logo is the same as it had been for several years by that point, but the injection of colour helps an old familiar face feel like it has a whole new lease of life in it. Some would argue it's far from ABC's most memorable ident, but as one of the key iconography pieces of early colour TV in the US, it's hard to ignore the impact. Let's see some more examples from the other national networks of the States, starting with CBS.
The Columbia Broadcasting Service, CBS. BS.
CBS presents this program in color.
Ah, the good old eyeball. CBS is a US network that has lived long in the memories of not only Americans, but audiences worldwide. The iconic eyeball symbol representing the brand for decades, and it's fair to say that their ident to help promote colour broadcasting is just as successful as the effort we saw from ABC. The CBS letters dropping in, accompanied by that electronic jingle, the eyeball zooming in, transforming the white letters into the glorious 3 primary colours of TV, it's just a fantastically designed sequence. Again, taking the audience familiar elements like the eyeball and completely giving it a fresh coat of paint, quite literally in that sense as well. Well, if ABC and CBS presented great colour idents in the 60s, can the third national network do the same?
NBC, the
Let's
peacock.
find out as we have a gander.
NBC, proud as a peacock. Yep.
The following program is brought to you in
NBC, proud as a peacock.
From eyeballs to peacocks. Just as millions associate the eyeball with CBS, equal amounts of audience members associate the colourful wings of the peacock with NBC, the third of the big 3. Out of the 3 early colour idents we've looked at from the States, I would argue that this is my favourite. Seeing the peacock spread its wings, which quickly burst into glorious colour, the continuity announcer's words perfectly punctuating what we're seeing on screen, I can only imagine that viewing this ident on a colour set back in the 50s or 60s must have been quite breathtaking. The few seconds where the colours flash about the peacock's wings is a nice extra touch, truly showcasing how mesmerising the new colour world can be. But it's clear from these 3 idents that the national broadcasters of the USA were determined to showcase the wonderful world of colour to audiences, really doing their utmost to convince them to purchase a new colour set. It's a shame that many modern day TV idents don't go out of their way to present themselves as gloriously as this, but you've got to admit, the Americans did a damn good job with this one. Let's stick around and have a look at another iconic name in US television, HBO.
Oh, HBO, not PBS. HBO. Home box office, HBO. HBO, home box office. Home box office, HBO.
Absolutely stunning. This particular sequence from HBO is often heralded as being one of the most iconic sequences in all of US television. The home box office first started up in the 70s before really taking off as the 80s came around. This ident, first seen around 1982-83, quickly became synonymous with the various feature presentations that were showcased on the channel. Starting off looking into an everyday living room, before zooming across town and into space, the glorious silver HBO logo coming closer into view. If the styling of the logo isn't iconic enough, the music that accompanies it is equally as memorable. We finish by going inside the logo itself, the feature presentation moniker becoming viewable to us, concluding the roller coaster ride of a journey that this ident presents us. Simply put, this whole sequence is an absolute triumph, from the attention to detail in the model work to the way the visuals and music blend together perfectly. It's no wonder that when people discuss HBO, many continue to bring up this iconic ident. Let's move on now to another channel that originated in the US by looking at the CW.
You mean the WB?
I'm telling you, a lot of these more modern sequences just don't have the same punch. I'm aware we live in an era of shorter attention spans and the like, but that doesn't mean you can't produce a short ident that still manages to have something unique and memorable about it. For the CW, whilst the logo is arguably recognizable, this sequence from 2017 is lackluster in so many ways. The color scheme chosen can work, but the ident doesn't really utilize it to the best effect. It comes off as feeling very dreary and dull. The tagline used here, "Dare to Defy," honestly for me just comes across as a bit cringe, not helped by the overproduced pop rendition of the slogan heard as the soundtrack. The actual concept of defying I'm absolutely behind, but again, the way in which it has been incorporated here just doesn't work. I'm hoping our next ident packs more of a punch, so let's see if it succeeds as we jump ship to Nickelodeon.
Which logo we're doing from Viacom?
Now, that's how you showcase a creative ident. You may remember that we've covered a vast selection of Nickelodeon idents before, in 2 different episodes looking at some of the earliest efforts from the late 70s all the way up until the present day. This particular sequence comes from the first great boom of the channel during the 1980s, when the iconic orange slime motif was first seen by viewers, creating a brand that would only grow from strength to strength as the years passed on. The idea of a flipbook being the central concept is certainly a great choice, more so given that most idents Nick used in the 80s were of the hand-drawn animation variety. In such a short space of time, we see how the Nick logo can be adapted so easily, from being a hat, to a plane, a tree, and so on. The old-timey music that accompanies it echoes back to the days of silent film, further emphasizing that dialogue isn't necessary to create an engaging piece of visual art. Some would argue there are many more iconic Nick idents from this era, but I've always had a soft spot for the flipbook, an often underrated sequence which holds up just as well as many of its peers. Speaking of peers, let's check out an ident from some of Nickelodeon's competition, starting with Cartoon Network. Now this one I used to see all the time. I only really had access to Cartoon Network from 2007, which is around the time that this ident first debuted. We see a man jump from a diving board, performing a varied and improbable bunch of tasks before hitting the water. The judges all scored 10. The M2 hold up the Cartoon Network logo, which by then was often abbreviated to just CN. It's nice to see an ident that doesn't use one of the Golden Age staple characters that were seen on the channel at the time. Such classics include Dexter's Laboratory, the Powerpuff Girls, and Ed, Edd and Eddy, to name a few. Granted, character-based idents are fantastic, especially the ones seen for Cartoon Network, but similar to Nickelodeon, I wanted to give the spotlight to an ident I remember seeing a lot growing up, and whilst it doesn't contain a popular character, I think it has lots of charm on its own. It's quite a simple concept when you break it down, but those straightforward ideas are done by Cartoon Network so well, and arguably showcases why cartoons have been so successful over the last 100 years. But speaking of a channel I remember showing nothing but classics, let's have a swing of the Boomerang.
Oh, good old Boomerang, 1932.
Perfectly echoing the classics. Boomerang is a channel I'll always remember seeing when on holiday, a place where all of the classic cartoons would find a home, a place where I'd see many of them for the very first time. This variant arguably encapsulates one of the most popular cartoon tropes of all, featuring Wile E. Coyote attempting to capture that dried Roadrunner. He attempts to use the Boomerang logo as a spring, but of course it doesn't go quite to plan, with the poor lad getting caught up in the logo instead. This version of the Boomerang logo itself is one of its most memorable, a simple string-like motif, but one that can be infinitely adaptable and interchangeable with its idents, just as we've seen here. I know people complain that the more modern Boomerang idents lose sight of that classic sort of vibe, but variants like this will always be held dear by those who remember viewing them. As particularly for the younger generations at the time like myself, Boomerang was our introduction and education into some of the all-time greats of classic animation. But now, we return back home to the UK to take a look at how our own efforts in children's television pan out. We'll start with none other than CBBC. Thought I'd go a little bit classic with this one. We've done a couple of episodes on CBBC before, one going through their entire history and another solely focusing on the 2016 ident set, which is still in use today. This one comes from a set introduced back in 1997, over 25 years ago. This was around the time that the children's block of programming was first seen as CBBC, with all of these variants adopting a yellow and black motif. This colour scheme is either loved or despised. I must admit, I wasn't a great fan when I was younger, but I've grown more warm to the yellow and black stylings as time has gone by. We see a cat eagerly waiting for a mouse to appear from its home, only to be duped by a classic glasses and moustache disguise. It's a very well-worn trope, but for the purposes of this ident, I believe it works just fine. Children's programming in the late 90s covered so many bases, from classic cartoons to brand new ones, as well as live-action sitcoms and game shows to boot. So to create a sequence that harkens back to the Tom and Jerry era, if you will, it really is quite a nice touch for CBBC. But of course, with every channel comes competition, so let's view an ident from CBBC's main competitor, CITV. Thought I'd continue on with the mouse motif. Like with CBBC, we've covered CITV before, mainly the idents from the 2010s. However, this ident comes from a set first introduced in 2009, which was after my time with CITV, but I believe really works a treat. A lot of the idents from this set don't really work for me at all. They feel too flat and bland compared to what CBBC was doing at the time. But this one actually feels more unique, with a great deal more effort and detail placed within it. A wind-up mouse spots a brightly coloured piece of cheese, emerging into the all-metal landscape to try and grab it. Of course, being situated in a mousetrap, the trap itself is sprung. The mouse seemingly avoiding certain doom, however, by hopping on top of the cheese, thus forming the CITV logo. The logo itself looks fantastic in cheese form, very charming indeed, and the mouse's ears representing the TV antenna is a really nice touch. I love sequences like this, to be honest, ones that aren't afraid to take the time to present us with a mini story, no matter how familiar it may seem. A mouse searching for a piece of cheese is a tale as old as time, but the way in which it reveals the CITV logo is arguably one of the biggest successes from this entire set. But now we go back to the earliest heydays of cinema, brought back by a channel that caters for the classics, Talking Pictures TV.
Secrets Mysteries, lies, and spies. Pitfalls and pratfalls. Slapstick and
Nothing, Homer. Just killing time, Homer, watching Rare Junk.
Cops and robbers.
That's what I'm doing. Nothing really. Just doing odd things. He's been making videos, watching random junk on TV, and that's about it. Just look at some weird stuff. Yeah, I'm just killing some time right now. There's nothing really to do right now. I got some stuff coming up this Saturday. And this Sunday coming up, but that's about it. I got 2 videos coming next week. This Saturday and this Sunday, I got some videos to work on, but that's about it. Besides that, nothing really is going on. So yeah.
A retro-looking TV, complete with aerial, an old-fashioned radio mic being in the center.
I got myself a job. I got myself a nice job. It's a nice. Got myself a nice job. I work at I got me a job that. I got me a job that I should have thought about earlier, but I love my new job. And yes, I do work there. Yes, I got myself a new job at a brewery. Been working there now for a little bit, almost 2 months now, and it's a nice job. I get paid pretty good. And boy, the boss really loves me. Yeah, the best part is, I mean, the job's pretty good. I make my money, and that's about all I can say. I can't really do videos at work, but I at least did one video at work, so that's good enough for me. And that's about all I can really say is that work has been really good. I mean, I gotta get off this because this what I'm watching here is getting boring. Anyways, but yeah, he's killing time, just doing random stuff. So yeah, he's killing time, having fun. That's all I've really been doing past 2 days, just doing random stuff. Getting closer and closer to my goal of the big old 30,000 video subscribers, and getting close to more subscribers than that. But yeah, I'm just killing time, having fun. That's what I'm really doing. Just gonna stay on until like 8, which will be in an hour or so. But there's not much really happening today. Just killing time. Past few days it's been hot as hell here. Lately it's got warmer. Lately it's been getting colder, which is good. I've been working at the zoo lately. I've been going to the zoo lately, doing some work at the zoo lately. It was so funny because I was at the zoo the other day, and one of the animals was there. I don't know how to say it, but we have a few turtles at the zoo. The turtle already walked toward me and acted like a dog laying next to my side for a couple minutes before it started moving away. I wish it stayed there so I could take a picture of it and make it last longer, but yeah. So yeah, it was a pretty good episode. It's pretty. I should take a picture of it because they've been pretty cool to put online, but yeah. It happened real fast. Oh, I got that one video to upload still.
What are you saying?
I got a video I gotta upload in a little bit. Anyways. Oh shit, this is gonna hurt. Yeah. So I got some pretty good stuff that came out recently, so yeah.
I told him, leave it. Shut up, Ron. I'm about that.
That doesn't sound good. Yeah, I'm not watching that either. But yeah, I got some pretty good pictures that came out. I'll put those on my playlist later. I'll put those on the public thing later, but yeah.
I know, Cowboy. It's okay.
Delete all these because it doesn't work. But yeah, that's what I've been doing, guys. Okay, guys, we're done.